While you're watching the NFL playoffs, you're watching potential candidates for the next head coaching job. On Saturday, you got to see the Ravens defense stifle the Houston Texans offense. Well, their defensive coordinator, Mike Macdonald, is one of the head coach interview requests for the Commanders. Also, you got to see Ben Johnson on the sideline for the Detroit Lions. They were impressive. Of course, Goff has had a resurgence in his career. Ben Johnson scheduled to interview. So is Aaron Glenn, who is the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. But one guy who was not on the sidelines during the playoffs, but apparently was interviewed. And this, according to the Schultz report on Twitter, the Commanders interviewed assistant head coach OC Eric Bieniemy for their head coach position this week. The meeting included owner Josh Harris, new GM Adam Peters, and Bieniemy, who I'm told had a, quote, excellent and highly detailed approach.
Well, he's got the time to put that all together.
Does anybody really believe?
I don't believe
does
it'll
anybody
happen.
believe
No.
this line that's coming out?
Is it kind of a courtesy to Bieniemy?
I think it's probably more that than anything. Does anybody really think that Josh Harris is going to hire Bieniemy as the head coach
I would
after
be
watching what
stunned.
happened this season?
I'd be
I think
stunned.
it's unlikely.
Every game?
The amazing thing about this is,
I would puke.
the amazing about it, and that seems to be the universal response. I put this up on Facebook because Josina Anderson reported this first. Said, hey, how would you feel if he was hired? And most people are like that. But the amazing thing about this is, if you went back 3 months,
People wanted him.
80 to 90% of the fan base would have been for
a lot
it.
can change in 3 months. There's a lot
Just
of
in-
things can
listen.
go wrong in 3 months.
I don't doubt. I actually think somewhere, someplace, he could be a good head coach because I do like his leadership qualities. I've kind of said that all season, and I don't mind holding people to a high standard. I think that's great. He's obviously a hard ass. There's a place for that for sure.
Yeah.
But I just didn't like a lot of the guys here didn't like him. Now you could say that's the problem with them, not him. Okay, but and they just didn't produce the offense. He didn't get anything more than Scott Turner got out of this offense. Maybe like a half a point. I mean,
But maybe
It's
if you
very similar.
give him better personnel, maybe he is more
right.
productive.
Well, he don't have it here.
He doesn't
So
have it
go
here.
somewhere else, get better personnel. I'm not saying he couldn't be a great leader of men,
Yeah.
but his offensive coordinator abilities I wasn't blown away.
Here's one thing that we don't know. So all of these head coaches, the ones that are in the playoffs, they're doing Zoom interviews, right?
Yep.
I'm looking at Pro Football Focus's coaching tracker. And what's interesting about Washington, I'm looking at other teams like the Chargers. And for the Chargers, it says completed interviews with Brian Callahan, Leslie Frazier, Aaron Glenn, Patrick Graham, Jim Harbaugh, Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald, Todd Monken. I mean, they've completed interviews with, it seems like 15 guys.
Yeah.
Like, look at the list.
Yep.
And for the Commanders, and maybe this isn't accurate, if this is updated, it says the only guy they've completed is Eric Bieniemy, and everybody else is
Right, because
scheduled.
These Zoomers suck.
Yeah, they don't count as like full-blown interviews.
I mean,
Okay,
think
but
about
it's,
it. Think
it's
about
counting for the other teams. So Ben Johnson has completed an interview with the Chargers, not with the Commanders. Raheem Morris has completed an interview
because
with the
maybe
Chargers,
the Commanders have said
not with the Commanders.
we're going to do Zooms
I don't
to
know.
get to know them, but we're going to do second interviews in
Yeah.
person. Because think about the disadvantage you are if all you can do is Zoom interview and some of your candidates you're up against can do live
yeah,
interviews.
of course.
No, I get it. Like, I'm looking at the Seahawks. All right, this guy's pretty popular. The Ejira Viro guy, who's the defensive coordinator from the Panthers.
He is.
Yeah, he's being interviewed by a bunch of teams, and it says head coach interview request, second interview scheduled
Their defense
with
was actually
Seattle.
good.
Yeah.
Maybe they just haven't updated Washington, because I'm telling you, when you look at it, Bieniemy's the one guy they've completed. And what I'd say is,
I wouldn't
this is
put
what
too
we
much
don't know.
stock in the
This is what
website.
we don't know. These guys, Peters, Josh Harris, and whoever else is making the decision, whether Bob Myers and Spielman are still in the mix, they're getting a pitch. And maybe Bieniemy's pitch will be more impressive than some of these other guys. I agree with you on the stats. I was bringing that up all season long. The offense didn't really improve from Scott Turner's offense. Now, he could say, well, I was stuck with Sam Howell.
Sam
I
Howell
led the league in
Sam Howell played
interceptions.
excellent for him in the first half of the season.
But I'm just saying what he could say is I was stuck with this guy, inexperienced, led the league in interceptions. My head coach wouldn't let me switch to the guy that I wanted, Jacoby Brissett. I don't know what he could say.
What I would say the counter to that is, just to defend him, is that you didn't do him any favors. You dropped him back 50 times. I mean, what
I
are
don't
you doing?
disagree with you.
What are you doing?
I don't disagree with you, but he also can say...
I put a lot of stock in the fact that historically, when a new owner and a new coach come in, they don't keep the same coordinators.
Right,
No, I agree with
let
you.
alone elevate
They
them
don't.
to head coach.
Yeah, they don't do
I
it.
agree with you, but what if he has the best pitch? What if he has the best defensive
Doesn't
coordinator
matter.
lined up? These guys all have to give you a pitch. This is what my staff is going to look like. This is what I'm going to do.
I would say
You rule him out of hand.
yes, because
I
of
do.
what he did on the field
There's a-
last season with this group.
It's a better chance that Drab climbs Mount Everest than Eric Bieniemy becomes head coach of the Commanders.
If you
Now,
wanna
he may
chime-
become a head coach elsewhere,
Right.
But it's
It
not
ain't gonna work
happening
in this
here.
group.
If you want to
Didn't
chime
work.
in, 800-636-1067.
He had a 17-game interview.
And you know what?
How would you feel if Bieniemy, they're reporting him as viable, and the leaks are it was an excellent interview, and he was
They're
very
leaking that on
detailed.
purpose. They're not going to interview him
800-636
and say he sucked.
800-636-1067.
Well, I also have read, and I don't know what to believe. I know you're reading that these interviews haven't happened yet, but I've also all read that Raheem Morris already interviewed, Aaron Glenn already interviewed.
I would just say that website's not up to date.
Ben Johnson already interviewed. There was another one I'm missing.
Maybe they just don't count
Quinn.
the
I've
Zoom
read
interviews
that
as
all
a full
those guys
interview.
have already
what I'm
interviewed.
telling you is they did for the others.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know why
Just
Washington didn't
don't,
have.
just don't put too much stock at some Schultz website.
No,
Whatever
this
that
is from Pro Football Focus.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that. Because the Commanders have already, and I'm reading from multiple websites, they've already interviewed Aaron Glenn.
Yes.
So they've already completed that one. And that was a day before they played the divisional round.
But they didn't interview him in person, right?
I'm sure it wasn't in person.
Well,
though.
you're not allowed to interview these guys in person
If
until
they're still in the playoffs.
today, I believe, the 22nd.
Right. I don't know. I don't really care about the timeline. It doesn't matter to me. Just get the right guy whenever you do.
It's kind of crazy to me that Belichick and or Harbaugh haven't been officially named yet. Harbaugh's already interviewed a couple different times with a
The
couple
longer it
different
goes
teams.
with Harbaugh, the more I think he's just using him to get a better deal at Michigan.
I don't know what to believe on that.
He was at the Ravens game having a great time, supporting his brother.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these guys, like you said, are doing Zooms. But, I mean, the Chargers have interviewed 15 guys. Probably half of them were Zooms.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a response in favor of Eric Bieniemy from Javon Howard on our Facebook page, facebook.com/thejunks. I'm cool with it. He'll need more pieces, though, O-line and maybe another wide receiver or blocking tight end. Like, I think the people that are supporting him, they point to the personnel and saying, well, what could you expect?
A lot more. I expected a lot more. Be honest.
I think most people
I
expected
expected a lot more.
a
I expected
quantum
more
leap from the offense.
I
and it
expected
didn't
actually
happen.
more creativity. Like, I understand you didn't. We all know you don't have Mahomes and you don't have Kelsey and all these other guys, Tariq Hill. I get it. But you can still have some more
He
creative.
waited till the last game of the season to get
Yeah.
creative and go into his real bag of
I
tricks.
know. Like,
What are you doing?
I don't
Like,
think
why
that's
did-
totally fair. I think he did do
It's
some
not?
things early in the season. Here's one from Borzu.
he didn't really do that much.
Asbafari said the way Brissett played when he got a chance makes me think EB wasn't the real issue. Not enough to make him my first choice, but there are worse options. And I'd like to see what he could do.
I would just say I'll puke if they hire him because he had a 17-game interview and it didn't go well.
What if he was held back by Ron?
I don't
What if he
believe that.
wanted Jacoby to play?
I don't believe that. Ron wanted to run the ball, prior to him coming here. Ron didn't even know what he had in the quarterback room, completely clueless. I don't believe that at all. He said he turned it over to Eric. It sounded like he did, other than maybe some fourth down calls.
Well, Bieniemy should have made a bigger stink if he wanted Brissett earlier in the season. He should have basically said to Ron, I'm going to go on strike if we don't play Jacoby Brissett.
Right.
Because he's better than Sam Howell. Otherwise, you're not going to have an offensive coordinator. But I still want to get paid.
Getting back to the interviews, Valdez, you might know this because you follow the Ravens, obviously. Didn't the Commanders already interview Anthony Weaver and Mike McDonald.
I think you're right. Via
Yes.
Zoom.
Yeah, that was before Peters.
That was during their off week, their bye week.
So I think that was before Peters was announced as the new.
Well, they
GM.
said they gave out the list, right?
Yes.
There's a public list of who they were going to interview.
Yeah, that's
I
why I
don't
don't.
care.
That's why I don't believe this because they've already done a number of interviews already.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
this website's saying they've only done one.
PFF.
Yeah,
Or
Yeah,
NFL.com, whichever. I was looking at a bunch.
Yeah, I would just say that it's just not accurate. And who cares? They said they're going to interview these guys. They're going to interview.
they're
All
gonna.
right, let's go to the phone, see what people think. What if Bieniemy emerges as the head coach? How would you feel? I saw some people saying they would lose respect for Adam Peters. Well, you're all excited that you got this general manager, right? Let's say the general manager, clean slate, interviews 6 guys and Bieniemy's the best.
No, here's what's going to happen. If Adam Peters walks into Josh Harris's office and says, Bieniemy's the best candidate, Josh Harris is going to look him right in the eye and say, well, you better go back and re-interview some candidates, my friend, because that is not the best candidate. That's what would happen.
I'm trying to think of an outrageous bet I can make if they.
I hope you do.
Yeah.
Please come up with something.
I might just
Change your name from EB.
I know. I might. I was
You'll
thinking the
give it
same
to 'em.
thing. Well, I was just thinking I'll just retire my name. Like you can never call me EB again. I don't want to have the same initials.
Eric. It was Eric.
I
Yeah.
changed my nickname.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's not going to happen though. It's not going to happen. They're not going to hire him. It was a big crash and burn.
All right, we got a bunch of people that want to chime in.